Before I begin rambling about Datamines, I would like to ramble about this production real quick, because I wanted to make it clear that this is my first public YouTube video, and as such, I have no pre-existing viewer base, monetization, or any other kind of incentive to make this, beyond simple enthusiasm for the Mario Kart community, and the desire to clear up some things for the average Datamine spectator who may not know what's going on. A lot of time, research, and passion went into this project, and I want it to reach as many eyes as humanly possible, so if it's not too much trouble, I would implore you to like, comment, subscribe, etc., and perhaps most importantly, share. Share with your friends, your enemies, your family, your friends' families, your enemies' families, and so on. From the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it. Also, while I'm at it, a quick disclaimer. I am not a dataminer for Mario Kart Tour or Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I am simply a fan who spends an absurd amount of time on the internet researching and theory crafting, and I want to help other people do the same by gathering into one place and amplifying the voices of actual dataminers. I do my absolute utmost to fact check and verify everything here that I present as factual, but if you have any concerns or doubts, I would advise you to shoot me a comment or DM on Discord, or alternatively, you could go straight to one of the experts I have cited in the description below. Now, with all that out of the way, ahoy there! Thanks for checking out my video. I'm not going to name names since most of these folks mean well, but I'm getting tired of all the misinformation and unfounded speculation that I've been seeing floating around YouTube and other websites regarding Datamine courses for Mario Kart Tour, so I thought I'd throw my hat into the ring and see if I can help clear some things up. I get all my information directly from free-range dataminers and leading datamine theorists with no added preservatives, and sources for all of my info can be found in the description. Every time I say something that is speculative or based on an assumption, I will be sure to clarify it as such. Obviously, this video contains major spoilers for upcoming courses in Mario Kart Tour, including both brand new courses and returning retros, so if you really want to avoid being spoiled for the funny mobile kart racer, you'd best click away now. Be sure to like and subscribe on your way out though. Even if you think you already know a thing or two about data mining, it might be advisable to keep watching the explanations anyway, as you could learn something new. And as I said a moment ago, if you find that I got any details wrong, do not hesitate to pose a question or statement in the comment section, and I will pin a comment to clear up any errors. With all that said and done, I'm the CEO of Lasagna, and I'm no good with intros, so I'm just gonna hop into this. I thought I'd get started today by talking for a few seconds about why you should trust data mining, because I've been seeing data miners and their associates take a lot of undue criticism and skepticism as of late. It'll never not be surprising to me that there are still people who don't trust info that was essentially provided from the developers themselves, but what can you do? While some might tell you otherwise, Datamined information has a nearly perfect track record of predicting upcoming courses for the game. Super Nintendo Bowser Castle 3, Wii Rainbow Road, Yoshi's Island, this or that city course, you name it, they saw it coming a mile off. Major blunders in the datamine speculation scene are never a result of false information, but instead typically have to do with some kind of assumption or misinterpretation of the data. As the game chugs on and we learn more about how it works, dataminers are only going to get better and better at correctly deciphering what the data is pointing to, and oversights that led to things like the Orlando fiasco, more on that later, are going to become increasingly rare. Predicting upcoming tours, on the other hand, is not quite as solid. I won't be getting into all the details on this topic today, but you aren't missing out on much if you don't fully understand this. Contrary to popular belief, there is no clear, accurate correlation between season IDs, seasons being the internal name for tours, and course ID updates. Forecasts are made simply by analyzing bunches of courses that receive ID updates around the same time, a process that is far from an exact science and can take quite a bit of guesswork, especially when it comes to figuring out exactly when the tours will take place. Generally, the approximate time frames for course releases will be fairly accurate, but be wary of putting too much stock in them, especially if we're talking like 4 or 5 plus tours out. The next time you see a forecast, you should check in with the person who made it or local datamine expert to find out what parts of it are solid and how much is speculation. One thing that I see being discussed a lot more than I should is whether Nintendo leaves red herrings, or purposefully false or misleading data aimed at data miners, in the code. Let's put it to rest now. The answer is a big, fat no. The developers do not go to the trouble of adding things to the game simply to throw us off their trail. There is no precedent for this in the 10 plus years that they've been making games that receive patches, and logistically speaking it would just be more trouble than it's worth for them. I don't think there's any room for argument on this topic, so don't bring it up with me unless you like getting ignored. Having said all that, you're more than welcome to take all of this information with a grain of salt and not let your expectations get carried away. It is your opinion after all. But don't get upset if you're laughed out of the room when you try to treat datamined info like it means nothing for the game. It is a tried and true way to see things coming. That is, if you know how to interpret it. Hopefully today I can be of some assistance in that interpretation. Now for the juicy part, how exactly this stuff is deciphered. There are two primary methods we can use to determine what courses are planned for the game. Via finding unused content such as textures and references to currently non-existent objects, and via analysis of numeric course render IDs. The former is pretty much what you would expect. You find unused content in a live service game, and we reason that they probably intend on using it at some point. Simple, right? The latter method is a bit harder to explain, so bear with me for a few moments because I think it's vital to the current data mining landscape. Course render ID analysis is a field of data mining that, as far as I'm aware, is very unique to Mario Kart Tour because it relies on the way the game's internal list of course images, or renders, is sorted. As you can see on the screen, the list is divided into Classic, New, Remix, and Battle categories. From there, non-new courses are sorted alphabetically by their platform codes, or prefixes, little 2 or 3 letter abbreviations that indicate what console the courses hail from. They're based on the Japanese prefixes, so SFC for Super Nintendo, AGB for Game Boy Advance, and GC for GameCube. And in case you were wondering, MOB stands for mobile, as in mobile phones, and indicates a course original to Tour. Now, within each category, the courses themselves are sorted alphabetically by their internal names. A retro course's internal name is almost always based on its official American name, unless its Japanese name consists of English words. The internal name for a Tour original course is typically a very basic codename that briefly describes the concept behind it, and the internal name for a city course is simply the name of the city. Each course takes up a chunk of IDs, which correspond to images used to represent the course in-game. What you're seeing right now are the visible IDs for the Tour Original Athens-1. _BG refers to the blurred image you see on the entering race and results screens. _sub refers to the wide shots of the course used when viewing a driver's favored courses, and the missing IDs are for _main images, which are the actual course icons that you see on the cup selection screen. You can see some examples here. One key thing to note is that even though we can't see them listed, the _main images are the main thing that cause chunks to grow, because usually more are created in preparation for a course's return in a future tour. This actually ties into the whole tour forecast business I mentioned earlier, but again, that's a story for another day. The ID chunk for a given course always begins with _BG and ends with X_sub, X being the internal label for T variants. There are usually no unused ID numbers between the end of one course's chunk and the beginning of the next course's chunk. As you can see here, no numbers are wasted between the end of 3DS Bowser's Castle and the beginning of Cheep Cheep Lagoon. Neither are any for Lagoon and Daisy Hills, or Hills in Mario Circuit, and so on. Numbers aren't even skipped for the ends and beginnings of different prefixes, like right here between 3DS and Game Boy Advance, or here between Super Nintendo and Wii. The numbers do reset to 1010000 at the beginning of each new course category, but that doesn't really factor in here. What does factor in is the fact that there are a few spots between courses where render ID numbers actually do go to waste. Like right here between Game Boy Advance Cheep Cheep Island and Peach Circuit, or here between GameCube Mushroom Bridge and Yoshi Circuit, or even here between Berlin Byways 3 and Merry Mountain, Hill Climb being its internal name. And to make matters worse, every time a tour adds a new course or adds new renders to a pre-existing course, obviously all of the ID chunks are shifted, yet these so-called ID gaps move with them, and many of them even get larger. So they must be intentional. And you can give yourself a pat on the back if you can see where I'm going with this. When the developers wrap up work on a course to be added to Mario Kart Tour, which is invariably several months or even years before it releases, that's when they take the screenshots and start rendering icons for it, and they create an opening in the render ID list for it. And as time goes on, even before the course's release, they add more _main renders to the list as they decide on what upcoming tours to feature it in. Several very helpful dataminers have put a lot of time and energy into extracting this list of IDs, studying the patterns, and creating the theory that explains this phenomenon, and you can find a list of their names and some helpful links in the description below, as well as in the credits at the end of the video. Now, with all of that out of the way, we can finally talk about what's actually been datamined.